Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. And today's opinions will be about The Empty Grave, Book 5 of Lockwood Co. by Jonathan Stroud. And I'm gonna admit, I was weirdly not in the mood to read this week. And it's not the book's fault, I was just in a very heavy mood. But that meant that this book took me a really long time to get into, and I will admit there's a lot more in the middle that is a little bit vague to me than books usually are, but I 100% believe that this is not the book's fault. This was just this was a really good conclusion to a really good series, and I was in a really bad place for reading. But this book is the last of the Lockwood & Company series, so yes, there will be spoilers for the rest of the series. As usual, I'm going to try my best not to give spoilers for this book, or give a warning before I do. But, as usual, if you haven't read book 1 through 4, maybe read those, watch my videos on them, and then come back and watch this video. Unless, of course, you're one of those weirdos who just enjoys watching books, reviews with spoilers. That's fine. Go ahead. Do you. You do you. I actually watch spoiler reviews all the damn time. They're just usually about books that I'm not going to read. But the important thing is this book starts with Lockwood & Company investigating Marissa Fitz. They had reason to believe that the first 2 agents ever, Rotwell and Fitz, may have been involved in something hinky, and there is a small suspicion building that they may be somehow responsible for the spread of the problem. We start with them literally breaking into Marissa Fitz's tomb to see if she is really there. Soon they will be running all over London, starting fights with the most important people in England and on the other side. If they can just survive long enough to reveal the truth, it will turn out great. But that's going to be a bit of a struggle. And I feel like that is somehow the most of the synopsis I can give you without there being all the spoilers in the world. Because these books are so oddly plotted. And I sorta absolutely love how oddly plotted they are. But it's a bit like rolling downhill as part of an avalanche. Sometimes there are bits where you are just sort of floating above the rest of the plot, and it doesn't feel really connected to the rest. Sometimes we're bouncing off the side. Sometimes we're rolling straight forward with absolutely nothing stopping us. But most of these books are just a little bit oddly plotted. And most of them start with a case that is completely unrelated to the rest of the story. Just as a bit of a, introductory action, a display of the current character dynamics, and an introduction to the themes. And in a way, this book is the same. And in another way, it's the exact opposite. Because the first little section of this book is deeply entrenched in the main story. We jump right into the main conflict of the book. But otherwise, it does everything else that these scenes usually do. It shows us a bit of the character dynamics and where they've evolved to, and oh my god, the evolution of the character dynamics. It gives us some action and sets us up on the right thematic track. But then we get a pretty much completely unrelated case after that. And, this case is the one that I usually expect to be at the first of the Lockwood & Company books. We go investigate a theater, and it is, it's all thematically relevant and showing important emotions and, giving us a lot on the character development, but has nothing to do with the greater plot. And I sort of love that. I love Monster of the Week episodic storytelling, and so many books completely abandon that as the story builds, and I'm always just sitting there being like, I'm glad y'all are growing and whatnot, but where's my silly little adventures? This is why I like filler episodes of anime, because I'm always just like, you left behind the episodic stuff, and I like the episodic stuff. And Lockwood & Company decided to just keep them coming straight through the end of the series. We still have those little episodic moments. Hell, at the end of this book, we have a little short story inserted that is, I'm assuming, going to be another episodic adventure. I will admit, when I wrote this, I had not read it. I have now read it since then, but I'm going to have my thoughts about that being completely separate. But the point is, Jonathan Stroud found a way to have both the episodic storytelling and the greater arc at the same time, with both of them feeling like they had equal weight. And a lot of the way he did that was literally just by saying, no thanks to traditional story structure. This is not one smooth story up and down. This is a lot of little stories, and it works really well. And part of the reason it works is the overall character arcs are incredibly solid across the entire series. I absolutely love where Kipps has evolved to by the end. I love where Holly has evolved to, and the rest, well, honestly, they feel a little bit more like Lucy evolving to see them more clearly, but it works for me. And she's only able to see them, especially Lockwood, more clearly because they evolved to let her in, which is their sort of character arc. But I noticed in the last book that, last review I did for the last book, how much more mature Lucy was a huge portion of my analysis, because Lucy grows so much in this series, and that continues in this book. Like, she is so emotionally mature by this book. She has come to recognize her companion's complexity, like she sees their good and she sees their bad and she sees their humanity. She's taken the weight of the world on her shoulders while at the same time not seeing herself as the main character, and I'll come back to this point because this is really fucking fascinating. But she still is sometimes, for a lack of a better word, mean about the way she perceives other people's appearances, but she has finally shifted that so that it feels a little less like her being hyper-focused on people's flaws, and more feeling like the teasing you do with people who you know are sure of themselves, and you're all part of a tight enough knit community that you know what's off limits and what's not. Basically, it feels more like teasing friendship and a little bit less like her just being mean. But some of the emotional insights she had here are absolutely spectacular, while still feeling like they are a natural outgrowth of who she was in the previous books. Like, one of her big concerns throughout this entire book is the question of, is there anything more than the bonding that comes out of going through shit together between her and Lockwood? Like, is this relationship built on solid ground, or is it built on just having mutual bad experiences? And that is such a mature question! But she's still Lucy, because of course she doesn't actually talk about it with him. No, that would be way too much. But the juxtaposition of the maturity of her seeing this and the immaturity of her inability to talk to him about it feels so natural and feels very much like someone in their upper teens, and someone who's rather mature in their upper teens, and it's just really solidly done. But also, her awareness of Lockwood's self-destructive tendencies and her concern about it. It's really beautiful, and it felt really deep and real and visceral, and I really like the way it's handled, that no one is really sure if he actually is self-destructive or just hyper-focused on his goal and reckless. And that her real concern for him is that he does not have enough connection to life, to use the most cliche phrase, that he's lacking a reason to live, but he clearly does have a reason, and we as the reader can see it even while she does not see it, and even when she does see it, that is sort of almost too much pressure on her, and it gives her her own recklessness, and it's a really beautiful interplay of how people can be good for each other and how people can be bad for each other at the same time. And that was a big question in the last one, and this one feels like it's really resolving those themes. And that leads me to one of the most interesting themes in the series. Lockwood has always been the hero of the series. The way it's written, the way Lucy thinks, the way the characters are described, Lockwood is the classic hero, and Lucy and George are the classic sidekicks. But of course, that's not true. The books are from Lucy's point of view for a reason, and every single book she has been instrumental in saving the day. She is equally, if not more so, the hero. And there are moments in the very end of this book when she finally does realize that she is the hero, and that it's not about the coat, it's not about the rapier skills, it's not about the plans or the ability to stand there and look dramatic. It's about the willingness to risk yourself for a fight, for what's right, and to save others. And it's not one of those themes that's explicitly stated or laid out, but it's one that sort of sneaks up on you. Like, I did not really click that what we were doing with the different perspective versus who is the hero of the story, it didn't click to me until I was in that scene, and I was like, oh my god, and that was fucking gorgeous. And on that note, I really think getting the conclusion of a last book in a series right is really hard. Like, I am slightly prone to not finishing series, and one of the reasons is because so often the last book in the series is a letdown. So if I never read it, I never have to be let down. So often it's anticlimactic, or it feels forced, or it feels like it's too big for the series, or it feels like it leaves too much unresolved, or it feels like it comes too quickly, or it feels like it resolves everything too well. But this one, I do think this really hit the sweet spot of having a good amount of build-up, including building action. A lot of the clues and the mysteries are in place by roughly halfway through the book, but there's enough still to be discovered that it's not just pure action. The threat feels big and bad, but also feels beatable. Like, when they're lining up against each other, I'm like, yeah, she stands a chance. And I admit I hate it when a series feels like there is no way the heroes are going to win. Because if they do win, it often feels like the author just hand-waved a lot of stuff away to make it work. And if they don't, I'm gonna be mad. Because, yeah, as much as people say that romance is the genre that has to have a happily ever after, it's really rare to find fantasy with a completely sad ending. Like, when the heroes don't win, that's not common in fantasy. And when it happens, I do feel a little bit like I was tricked. But this one, the ending does feel like it's going to slowly unravel the problem. It feels like a logical place for this conclusion to happen, and it feels like the culmination of what they've been working to, and it feels like the completion of the character arcs as well as the action. And the character arcs and the action ended at the right time for each other. I will admit the character arcs I feel like ended just a little bit before the action, but I feel like that works fine for this one. And I love the fact that there are loose ends, but with the implication of them being tied off. Like, yeah, there will still be ghosts for them to fight, which I like. It's just my preference. I really do prefer an ending that implies continuing adventures, and this has it. But what really stood out to me in this book, again, was the prose. I really love Stroud's writing. The book is chock full of beautiful descriptions, though I will admit that a couple of them leading up to the climax did have me screaming at the book, not the time! I do not care what she's wearing, for fuck's sake. We're about to have the, climax of the book. Get to the climax. But the rest, it really builds the scene, it builds the character, and especially from the point of view of Lucy, it does some really interesting things. Especially in the first section of the tomb, it's beautifully creepy. I have been endlessly surprised by how wonderfully evocative the descriptions of the different ghosts are in this book. These books. Especially the wax one in this one, like, oh my god, that was creepiness, it was beautiful, and the creepiness in the theater, like, just all of it was spectacular, and like the other side, all spectacular, and even outside of the creepy descriptions, this one did have a lot of moments of absolute beauty that Lucy notices. And I love this because it very much feels like the Lucy of book one wouldn't have noticed these beautiful moments. She would not have noticed how beautiful the lavender poking through the cast iron fences look. That's not something that she would have been aware of. And her noticing shows us how much she has grown and how much she has emotionally gotten more healthy than she was in previous books. And just a good example of how beauty is used in this book, we're gonna go to page 275. I turned, and it was Lockwood. He hopped down the steps and came toward me across the grass, dark and thin and lit to shining by the dying sun. It was like he was going to ignite. That is utterly beautiful and very evocative, and comes at a point where Lucy is deeply worried that Lockwood is being very self-destructive. And then compare that to another description of Lockwood on page 414. Lockwood grinned at me from over his paint pot. He was standing by the window of our new spare bedroom, applying a top coat to the wall. A patch of sunlight bathed him, and since the paint was white and he wore a new white shirt, and it was a particularly sunny morning, the effect was enough to make you shield your eyes. I love it because this is just two moments of Lockwood standing in sunlight. And yeah, Lucy is prone to noticing that Lockwood is beautiful more than anything else because girl's obsessed. But she also notices other non-Lockwood things being pretty. But the way the light is used there, one feels dangerous. One feels like impending doom. And the other feels homey and welcoming. And like, that is just a beautiful little bit of description that is doing so much work for the thematic evolution throughout the book. And I love that. Now, that being said, I do, of course, have a few things I didn't like as much with this book. For one, because there is so much of the teasing of George that is hyper-focused on how large and how gross he is, it comes across as more than a little fat-phobic. Like, it has improved from the first books. In the first books, I was a little bit like, Lucy's really fat-phobic. But, I don't know. And I'm glad he doesn't seem to mind at all, because that could be a really useful way of showing kids that, hey, like, if you don't care, like, it's fine. It's nice seeing someone who does not get, like, at all care about his personal appearance. That could be really helpful for encouraging people not to be so hyper-focused on how they look. But I can definitely see someone who is overweight reading this and being hurt by the constant insinuation that looking at someone overweight, but obviously healthy, is somehow disgusting. Like, I just wish a little bit more of that had fallen away as Lucy grew up. And there's a moment that his physical appearance is used in such a gorgeous way. Like, when she sort of forces herself to, not even forces herself, there's a moment that she sort of sees past the teasing and the assumptions about George and sees the real him for a moment. And that is gorgeous. But it's one moment out of 5 books, each of which are like 500 pages, so that is like 2,500 pages of fat phobia, and like one moment of him being like, nah, man. And I will also admit, some of the things the Skull says are very pertinent, very good, but I just wish there was a little bit less teasing about George being disgusting in this book. And on another note, one of the themes I've loved from the very beginning of this series was the adultification of children and how it affects children, how it affects society, the weight put on kids. All of that was really interesting to me. And the entire premise of the series is because adults can't see ghosts and kids do see ghosts, kids end up having to step up and live, work, and die like adults. And I feel like that fascinating theme never gets resolved. Like, yeah, there's something to be said about the Penelope Marissa thing being sort of an avatar for the theme, but I feel like there really needed to be a moment of something, with someone acknowledging or coming to a conclusion or saying something about this, and it just sort of felt unresolved. Similarly, and this one is a bit spoilery, but I really expected to see some sign of Lockwood's parents or sister on the other side. Like, there's a specific spirit with a limp that I really expected to turn out to somehow be connected to them, and at least as far as this book is concerned, and this is supposed to be the last in the series, he's not. So it just sort of feels like this arc surrounding his family is left floating a bit too much, and like, it did get resolution with the use of Jessica's room, but that moment comes in such a high action moment when there's so much going on and so many other themes resolving that you don't really pay attention to it, and so it sort of feels like this really big, dramatic theme that's been part of the entire series just sort of disappears with a whimper. And on the other side of that, I feel like the resolution with the Skull was the exact amount of resolution I wanted. Like, there are some loose ends, there's some openness, there's still some questions, but I like where it ended. But overall, yeah, I really loved this book. Also, I really love, and I know this is stupid, but oh my god, I absolutely love the ghost sketches at the back. Like, that is wonderful. Please, more of things like this in books. I loved the fact that my favorite character didn't die, and no, I'm not telling you who it is. But what I loved most about this series was the growth. I feel like it hit the exact right point to me. Not so much that the series, the characters, the world, the books felt completely unfamiliar to who I met in book 1, but also still giving us the change, the evolution, and the maturing that we crave in a series. Overall, I think this is a really solid end to a great series, and I just wish I'd been in a slightly better mood when I was trying to read it.